Okay, look, here are some obvious facts. Some opinion, but it's based on facts. Jim Harbaugh has been successful at every stop he's made in his coaching life. He was successful at Stanford. He was successful before Stanford. He won 11 games at Stanford. He was close to winning a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers, an eyelash away from beating his brother's team in a Super Bowl. He then goes to Michigan, his alma mater, said he always wanted the job, and he took Michigan from being basically a punching bag for Ohio State to dominating Ohio State, and then he won a national championship. And he won a national championship fairly easily. They cruised through most of that season in which he won a national championship. And he took that roster, and the NFL draft was littered with Michigan players going into the NFL draft. He's now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, and he'll do well there too. I don't know how fast, but look, you can trust that Jim Harbaugh, one, he takes on jobs that he can win eventually, but eventually he pulls it off. It's basic, it's straightforward, it's sensible. Even though he comes off as a nut job a lot of times, the dude knows what he's doing. He'll make your team win. Jim Harbaugh is a professional liar and a sanctimonious jackass, and nobody seems to care. The answer with Jim Harbaugh's career is be a professional liar, cheat a lot, be a sanctimonious jackass, but if you win enough, you get to blame everyone else and get away with it and then still preach. That's Jim Harbaugh's mantra from his time at Michigan. Certainly his time winning at Michigan, that was the mantra. Michigan is a great school. One of the most respected public schools in the world. And they absolutely lost their ethical way, their ethical compass, because Jim Harbaugh was winning. And now they're cleaning up the Jim Harbaugh mess in a very embarrassing way. In his final year at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, the coach, was suspended more games than he was on the sideline. Or it may have, by the time he got to the championship game, I guess it may have been 50-50. Either way, he was off the field suspended as much as he was on the field coaching. And that's because Jim Harbaugh would break a lot of rules, a lot of different rules. He would then lie about breaking the rules often, and then blame everybody else for him lying and breaking the rules. That's not an exaggeration. That's actually what happened. He even went to the point, I remember it last year, and I remember how many people, gave cover to the guy for this. He would give he would show up to these news conferences, he would snap at everyone, and one time he gave this 9th grade history teacher-like sermon on due process and how he's demanding due process. Well, sure enough, when he was caught in another scandal, and they're silly, stupid scandals, but they're scandals, and he's cheating. He's cheating and lying about cheating. So then he says, I demand my day in court. And finally he got, for whatever reason, his day in court, and then he decided not to show up. Okay? The rules part of this is not about Jim Harbaugh. It's really not. It's just using Jim Harbaugh as an example for what I think is a bigger point. And I think sooner or later you're going to care. I think it's also a bigger point to mention Michigan, because I think sooner or later this slimy stuff, circles back to a program you like, a school you went to. And imagine if this were your school. Where I don't care how big or small it is. Just think about this is your campus. And at some point, ask yourself, when would I become embarrassed? When is this enough? So this is really a discussion, a rant about the rules, and not necessarily about Jim Harbaugh. So the NCAA came out, that's why I'm bringing this up, came out and announced punishment in the case of Jim Harbaugh in case he ever goes back to college football. I don't see him doing that, but who knows, he might. So here's what the governing body of college sports, and I'm going to say sort of the governing body of college sports, this is what the governing body of college sports came out and said. Los Angeles Chargers, this is from Yahoo Sports. It says Los Angeles Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh has been suspended for a year and given a 4-year show cause penalty by the NCAA for recruiting violations. The penalties were announced are not related to the Connor Stalions advanced scouting scandal that got Harbaugh suspended by the Big Ten for the end of the 2023 regular season. This is about other cheating and breaking the rules and lying about breaking the rules as it relates to recruiting. Okay, and so that story has got everybody laughing. It's got everybody in my space saying, what a goofball thing to do. What a reactionary thing to do. The NCAA is stupid. This is silly. You guys are goofballs. Everybody is taking this chance to say, that's ridiculous. Okay, well, let me just prepare you for what's coming your way sooner or later. Sooner or later. Laughing this off, sooner or later, ask yourself how interesting this sport is really going to be. So the rules part of this is the real focus. Understand this. For more than 50 years, the NCAA has governed college athletics. Okay, it's been the governing body, or maybe longer than 50 years, but something like that. The NCAA is like your neighborhood association. That's what it always was. And that is the schools, i.e. the neighbors, pay to be members, like you do with your neighborhood association. And I think it's a fair comparison. Like your neighborhood association, and then your neighborhood association passes the rules and hands out the punishment if there is any. And you all agree to follow those. And so you're members of your own neighborhood association. Those rules were enforced by the NCAA or the neighborhood association president. Like, nobody likes their neighborhood association. The person who wants to be the neighborhood association president is always going to be a weirdo. Nobody wants to do that. And nobody likes the NCAA. They're easy to make fun of. I've done it plenty of times for decades. Okay. They're really easy to make fun of now because they don't do anything. You know why they don't do anything? Because the sport has no rules. None. There are no ethics. There are no boundaries. There are no rules. I can't think of an industry that operates now like college football. And if there is one, outside of drug cartels, they're not going to last very long. In the past 2 years, the sport has been, or the NCAA has been neutered completely by name, image, and likeness. That is a sugar daddy approach to college sports. Handing dudes money. They are free agent mercenaries. They are cash kings. They are bouncing from place to place. There are no guardrails. None. And Jim Harbaugh, as Jim Harbaugh did, he did his part. You know what? He did his part because the NCAA wanted to talk to him. So the governing body, your neighborhood association, is gone. It's gone. Like, they tried to pass some rules, and all of you got together and made fun of them and said every time they came by to talk to you about your car on blocks or the trash in the yard or your hedges, you said F off. Everyone they tried to talk to, F off. And eventually nobody said, we're not going to follow you. You're not doing anything to us. Get lost, loser, dork. No one liked you anyway. That's what it is. That's what the NCAA is, and Jim Harbaugh did his part because every time he would get caught cheating in some goofy kind of way, he would say, F off. The school would back him up and say, F off. And then finally everybody realized, yeah, F off. What are you going to do? And the answer is nothing. So he wasn't suspended by the NCAA for the insane, comical, sign-stealing scandal involving Connor Stalions. The league, his own league, is the one that suspended him. And they were right. It was a sign-stealing scandal that is now a Netflix documentary because it's so goofy and so stupid on his part and everyone's part that it's like a Coen Brothers movie. It was silly from start to finish, but it was cheating. As usual for Jim Harbaugh, that's what he did. And he would lie about it and still lies about it. He won't shut up lying about it. So where's this going? Nowhere. You've got an industry with no rules, unlike the NFL. Here's the NCAA now trying to fix something with some disciplinary muscle. They're just trying to say something. They're trying to say, look, the guy cheated. He got away with cheating. You backed him up on cheating. We got to have some rules. You guys still pay me your membership dues, so I'm going to try to enforce some rules just so we have some sort of structure. And they're being torn to shreds by my industry, the talk space. The easy thing to do is come out and say, look how goofy they are. They're trying to suspend a guy in the NFL. No, they're not. They're trying to say, do we have any rules anymore? Are there any rules? Are there any ethics? Or is there any standards whatsoever? That's what they're trying to do. And everyone's making fun of them. Okay, be careful what you ask for. Okay, you asked for a lawless industry. You've asked for an industry with no rules. You've asked for universities with no ethics whatsoever. Be careful what you ask for. Right? All week long, there's been everything said about the NCAA or any governing body, because no one is going to step forward and say, we got to have some rules. The NFL does. That entertainment business runs just fine. We got to have some rules. You're going to be called antiquated. You're going to be called spineless. You're going to be called stupid, old-fashioned, bureaucratic. The list goes on. That's what you're going to be called. Okay, and all those things were true. Yeah, sure. And have been true for a long time. But there's a very fair question in all of this because Jim Harbaugh knowingly broke the rules. Members of his staff knowingly broke the rules, including the head coach who's deleting email. All of them have been lying about the rules. They just lie a lot. The guy who is now the head coach at Michigan, who was on Jim Harbaugh's staff, has been busted for deleting email about breaking the rules. And Michigan, a great school, should be embarrassed. Have you ever noticed that teams... Here's something. Have you ever noticed there's a correlation between winning and scandal in college sports? I mean, other than Nick Saban coach teams, and I don't know, I'm trying to remember now, maybe there was scandal there, but there's always some kind of scandal, lying and cheating that follows that coach when they win. Every week was a slimy Jim Harbaugh story, but he won. So fast forward to today, everyone. He's not in the college game. Forget him, Jeff. No big deal. You're the only one that cares. I'm not saying I care about Jim Harbaugh, nor do I care about the NCAA. What I'm telling you is eventually you're going to care about a completely lawless industry. College football today is a landscape of legalized payola and jumping conferences. That's the reality. Do you think there should be any rules? Should the sport be governed by anything or anybody? Should they have any rules whatsoever? If so, what are those rules? What? What would it be? Say none. Go ahead, say none. And then I'll bring up some points why you don't want it to be none. I don't care who is going to regulate this, but if you don't have any rules whatsoever, it's not going to last. The reason why they don't want any rules are people like Michigan and Texas want to steamroll everyone else and not be held accountable. They don't care. It's the greediest industry I can think of. It makes the pharmaceutical industry look above board at this point. So there are no rules. Should there be any rules governing the sport? Should there be any rules on and off the field for the sport at all? Wherever you work, I don't know, there's some rules. I bet you have some industry guidelines. I bet you might have management that tries to have some ethical standards. I bet you have some barriers. I bet at some point wherever you work in an industry, somebody says you can't do that. That's not okay. That'll come back to haunt us. Don't do that stuff or you're fired. You have some parameters. And if you don't follow them, you lose your job. I'm all for being an anarchist, but do you really think it's reasonable that the sport is almost completely lawless? The NFL nor the NBA is that way, and their business is bigger and better than ever, and their game is bigger and better than ever. Laugh off the NCAAs, okay? Notice how there's nothing to fill. There are no rules. University presidents, okay? So university presidents don't do it, and that's the starting point. That's what's most disgusting about the entire industry of college football. That's what's most disgusting about Jim Harbaugh's time at Michigan, fill in the blank the next coach, and the one before him, and every other one of them that cheats and lies and gets away with it because the university presidents who should stand up and say, I don't need the NCAA to have some ethics. I don't need the NCAA to have some standards. I don't need the NCAA or anybody else to govern this. This is my campus. I'm the university president. If you cheat and you lie, I'll fire you. They don't do it. They don't. Not when you win. So the university president of Michigan, again, fantastic school. What an embarrassment. They won't do anything because big donors will fire the president if the president fires the winning coach. Big donors. The University of Michigan president would have been gone had he stepped in and done the ethical and righteous thing anywhere along the way. And I would assume most people who teach and work there would say, you wouldn't let me get away with lying and cheating all the time, would you? No. That university president would step in and say, not on my watch. No, you're fired, and I'm not paying you. But that university president would then be fired by rich guys. So they're the most disgusting gatekeeper of all of this. That's university presidents. It's the disgusting gatekeeper that does not allow rules, does not allow standards, does not even follow any ethics whatsoever. Okay? So eventually they're going to want it. All of you are going to want it. Eventually you're going to want some sort of structure. You're going to want some sort of ethical standards. I know you're going to laugh and say, well, that business, Jeff, okay, well, watch it eat itself alive then. How would you like to be on the other side of a sign-stealing scandal? What if you lost a few games because some jackass on the other side could give a flip about stealing your signs or stealing anything for that matter? Now you're going to say, well, Jeff, that's not why they won. Well, it's why they cheated. And lied about it. But what if it was your school? What if you were the coach at that program? What if you were the president of a school in which the other side cheated and lied about it all the time and stole your signs? You don't do that. You would say, I try to follow some ethics. I have some rules. We can't do that. The biggest issue that's going to come up is tampering. You know what the NFL and the NBA have rules on? Tampering. In other words, if that is your employee under contract, you can't go and call him up. They have rules. The sport is going to need rules. It's going to need rules on revenue sharing. The sport's going to need rules desperately on tampering. And notice how nobody steps forward and says, here are the rules, here are the guidelines. If you break them, you're fired. If you break them, you're out. Because you couldn't operate. The NFL couldn't operate without some rules. The NBA couldn't operate without some rules. And there's no way this sport survives without this rule. We're all going to laugh at it until it circles back to the ethical programs, until it circles back to programs who say, we don't cheat, and we don't want to cheat. The game would be better. The NFL has standards, and they're met by the players and the owners, and everyone is in executive position. And the NFL and the NBA have standards about the game. They have a rules committee that decides every year about the rules. Notice the difference. College football wants to be like the NFL and is doing the very thing that will kill itself off, doing the very thing the NFL would never do. And that's be completely rudderless, with no parameters, no rules, on the field or off the field. Having no boundaries, in this Michigan case, it's funny and everybody likes to laugh at it. Everybody likes to say the NCAA sucks and Jim Harbaugh is cool. Having no boundaries is fun until it's not.